From the HBA podcast studio in New York City, welcome to The Medium Rules. I'm Alan Baldachin. Joining me today in the HBA podcast studio are Rich Rosenthal and John Bedolis of the hit Netflix show Somebody Feed Phil. How did it go from an idea to a fully formed PBS primetime hour of television?
Well,
You're like, where to begin? Talk a little bit about the challenges doing a show at PBS.
make it original while still ticking off the boxes they really wanted us to tick off. And, sometimes some of those remained empty.
The show, to me, has somewhat of an auteuristic feel.
I think he always felt it was his sensibility.
I feel it every day. He's a brilliant guy and a nice guy. And are you listening, Phil?
You're in love.
I am in love.
But I think you guys have creatively raised the filming of the breakfast party, lunch party, and especially dinner party to an art form.
Well, that was John and myself. I was standing in the back. We like to show off any city we go to in the best possible light.
Yeah.
But also,
Do a good job of it.
but also he doesn't want to be too hot or too cold.
The scene where he goes for the polar swim,
Yeah.
it comes out of the TV set at you.
We're sitting at the, the famous table where I'll have what she's having.
And no one acted out the fake orgasm scene.
No.
Okay.
Although the hot dogs were very good.
Joining me today in the HBA podcast studio are Rich Rosenthal and John Bedolis of the hit Netflix show Somebody Feed Phil. The show stars Phil Rosenthal, best known as the creator of the long-running and extremely popular network sitcom Everybody Loves Raymond. This show, Somebody Feed Phil, features Phil on screen as host and narrator as he travels the great cities of the world seeking authentic culinary experiences and authentic moments of human interaction. Phil has been dubbed the Borscht Belt Bourdain, and he brings a very specific sensibility to the show, which is part New York City Jewish outer borough, Phil grew up in Queens, part LA, where Phil lives now with his wife and family, and parts unknown, the Bourdain show, as well as an ode to human understanding through cooking and eating. Rich, who is Phil's brother, is an executive producer, and John is an executive producer and the director. Somebody Feed Phil debuted on PBS under the name I'll Have What Phil's Having and moved to Netflix after its first season and underwent a name change to Somebody Feed Phil. In its third season and second season on Netflix, the show has found a groove. Somebody Feed Phil is gorgeously shot and produced. It is lively, warm, funny, and entertaining, and it has incredible depth. In a nutshell, Somebody Feed Phil, in my opinion, delivers the best that the medium of television currently has to offer. On this podcast, Rich, John, and I will talk about the origin story and evolution of the show and their experiences and observations moving from public network television to the world of Netflix and OTT, and talk about finding their audience. I think you'll enjoy this great conversation. So with that, let's get started. John and Rich, welcome to the Medium Rules, and thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so let's get some basics out of the way. Who came up with the idea for Somebody Feed Phil at the time I'll Have What Phil's Having? And how did it go from an idea to a fully formed PBS primetime hour of television? Rich, why don't I let you take a crack at that?
I think Philip has told this story quite a few times, but he was doing Raymond at the time, and during hiatus, one of the hiatus seasons, he asked Ray what he was doing for vacation over hiatus, and Ray said, I'm just going down to Jersey Shore. Philip said, do you ever go overseas? Do you ever go to Italy? Which is, his ancestry. And he said, no, I'm not really interested in other cultures. That was the thing, although Philip does it with Ray's voice. And, Philip thought, we should really do that show. We should really do that show where Ray goes to Italy.
Sort of fish out of water idea.
Exactly, and not that interested, and comes back really excited about travel and everything that Italy has to offer, which is really what Phil is about. And they did the show, and sure enough, that happened to Ray, and Phil, that's where Philip really got the germ of the idea that, to show people other culture, other foods, and get them as excited as he is. So that's how it started. He'll say it took, and it probably did, it took 10 years for him to actually sell the idea to someone who would buy it. He had a couple of fits and starts. He had done one a show for Amex, which was he kind of learned what not to do on that one, and that was, and then we sold it, ended up selling it to WGBH. And it was somewhat, I would say it was somewhat fully formed, but you always kind of find each episode in the edit. Sure. In other words, what the arc of each show is. But I would say that was the germ. That's where the germ came from.
Not to skip ahead, but interesting you say that, because the shows now definitely have a consistency a little bit in terms of, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but you have set pieces to some extent.
Yes, well, you always could, because we always have good research, right, on who are the restaurants to go to, the best chefs to go to, right? So we always come in with that, but we always leave room for serendipity. And, and this is what's so great about the production, and John and the DPs that we work with, is they understand the show. The show is, yes, we meet people along the way. We meet the chefs and we meet sidekicks and we go to great places to eat, and we always have great food, but you never know when you're going to meet someone at the next table, or someone comes up to him, or something happens, and just that's kind of where the magic happens. And then also we like to put him in sort of situations that he may not be that comfortable in, because he likes to be comfortable. Yeah. And so like in Vietnam, we have him in a pond at 4 o'clock in the morning looking for lotus roots. Yeah. Lotus roots. And that was something that was greatly deliberated. Remember, it was like, how am I going to go in there? Am I going to have a boat?
He doesn't like to get wet.
He doesn't like to get wet. He doesn't like to be uncomfortable in any way, shape, or form. So even when we do the show, we do the show at like the best time of year. That's because, truth is, we like to show off any city we go to in the best possible light, but also do a good job of it. But also he doesn't want to be too hot or too cold.
That's so funny.
Well, and so anytime we can get him in a situation that he's a little uncomfortable in, it doesn't always work.
Right, exactly. But you do.
But we shoot enough. John shoots enough, so we can always leave it out if it's not great.
Spoiler alert on the Dublin episode on the current season, when the scene where he goes for the polar swim, is unbelievable, and he comes out purple, but he's had this unbelievably fun experience, and it just comes off. It comes out of the TV set at you.
Yeah, and I have to say that was something. That was his idea. I remember we were shooting at a restaurant in Dublin. It wasn't going. I think that's probably why, because it was a great place. Remember, it was a great place in Dublin. The food was delicious, but it wasn't a great scene. And I remember him saying, "It's like, what we should do? We should go back, and I should go swim." In the thing. So people always think almost there's nothing we ever do contrived. In other words, that was not planned. Like, we had gone and visited those guys, the Happy Pear guys in Greystones. Philip did not want to get into the water that morning. We offered it up, and that was like, sometimes it's a little too much out of his comfort zone. Mm-hmm. But I remember him at the restaurant saying, we should, and so we just did. We took the entire, I'm sure we completely freaked out our segment producer, but we just left. It was like 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Went to see him, and God bless him, he did it. Oh, it was great.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about the show is that Phil has such incredible instincts and writes as he goes, and we help him. But it's a shaping of a story on the fly. So he realizes oh, you know,
that's going to be really
this
funny.
is what's going to be great.
Yeah.
Well, we digress a little bit, which is fine. But I made the comment to John last night.
We're not good, but we're slow.
That's fine. I made the comment to John last night, Rich, that and John was like, "Don't say that on a podcast." But I feel like I'm a big fan of the Before movies by Linklater.
Yeah.
And I feel like the show has that picaresque quality of random encounters that lead to these little moments of insight.
Yes.
Like that movie, or like Slacker, you know, and that's an incredible magic to achieve in a documentary where, of course, you know it's supposed to be real life, but to have the little moments of human interaction along the way is
and that's something you never know until you're there. Yeah. Like we never, like I said, we can do a bunch of research and find the best chef, you know, try to get, you know, in with the best chefs and try to find the most interesting sidekicks, and we interview them on Skype beforehand, so we know that there's, you know, hopefully there will be some chemistry there.
Yeah.
But the stuff that really, you know, really jumps out is the stuff we find when we're there. We're talking with the locals. People will come over to him, you know, or he'll just like start up a conversation with someone, like this woman in Cape Town that we found in, you know, some deli, like not a deli, but like a prepared food store. And she turned out to be, that was like the whole, you know, that was the greatest part of the show, if not one of the best sort of interactions we've ever had on the show.
From a creative perspective, talk a little bit about the challenges doing a show at PBS.
Well, you know,
you're like, where to begin? Maybe a little unfair to PBS, but just institutionally.
I mean, I think, you know, one thing for a place like PBS is that funding is always an issue. I think we wanted more than anything to do the show, and the resources were a little bit limited. So we really had to find a way to, you know, get it done with what we had. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like there was nothing, because there was a normal.
It's all relative too. I mean, you know.
Yeah, but you know, that's one thing. The other thing was, at that time we were finding the show. You know, a difference between PBS and Netflix is that we had already done a season of it by the time we got to Netflix. So when we were at PBS, we, along with their, you know, executive team, were, you know, trying to figure out exactly what it was and what we could do with the parameters we had.
What?
They were very much, especially in post, I think they were much more concerned about it having a theme and a real strong arc. And, you know, some shows could have that, but some shows didn't. Yeah. You know what I mean? There was always something. There's always something that Philip finds wherever he goes. Like we were talking before, it's like if he's in New York, do you know, he knows what New York is going to be, right? It's going to be his it's going to be his New York. When he's in Italy, he knows Italy really well. You know, he's that's the one place he's traveled quite a bit. But when he went to Tokyo in I'll Have What Phil's Having, he didn't know. You know, he had never been to Asia before, so he didn't know what it meant. But he found what it was, and it was the sort of the quietude among the chaos, right? Or the perfection among the chaos, you know, in the sushi places and in some of the other places that he found. And so sometimes you do have a strong theme and sometimes you don't. And to us, it's like, if it's entertaining, if it moves, if it still has a nice arc to it and you're not bored, that's fine. They had a much bigger problem. They some of the notes we would get is like, you know, you'd have a nighttime scene, you know, we'd have a nighttime scene and then it would be the next day. And they would be like, how do you know it's the next day? I'm like, wow. You know what I mean?
Do you want to show the sun coming up?
Exactly.
It was a little
it was a little bit literal and on the nose. And the other thing is that they were doing, you know, they would have like 5 or 6 people giving notes and they would just, you know, which for for us who are in the edit, it's really annoying
And
because you've
producers.
got then conflicting notes because you're not consolidating the notes. I know this is a little too much in the
No,
weeds,
no,
but
no,
you know
no,
what I mean.
It's exactly
but if
what
you
I'm
have,
getting at.
but
It's
if you
gonna
have, if you
build
have 5 people giving notes and you're not consolidating, then you're just looking at a mess of stuff where almost every beat of the show is being commented on by someone. And you're like, what notes do we take? And very early on, we said, we'll only take the notes that seem, right to us.
Yeah.
And that was it. And we were really strong about that. And that's the great thing about Philip, who's, he's had success. So he doesn't have to, it's like, this is the show we want to do. And this is the show we're going to do. And so you can give us all the notes we want. We're happy to take them. But
we might not do them.
But ultimately, we may not do them.
Does that has that friction? And we'll talk about what challenges there are in Netflix. But has that friction gone away? Has that creative
you still get
cleared?
Notes usually if there's I would just say we get far fewer notes from Netflix, and some of them are very good. And we do try to address every note in some way because, we always find that if there is a note, if there is something that's bothering them, they may not be able to articulate it, but it may be something that we need to look into. And very often it's like, it's a line or it's this or it's a cut or something like that. And you change it and you realize that you make it better.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, even when we fight, we'll look at it. And we'll see. And a lot of times, we can live with that.
Okay.
So,
which is a typical thing for any show,
of course,
know. And the one thing I was going to say about our relationship,
it can't be a closed, sealed.
No, and I mean they, networks know their viewership and know their habits and know what they, how your particular show is going to fit into their slate of programming and
at a network.
And so they have ideas about how they want it to be, going back to PBS for a second and WGBH. They had ideas about making a
certain kind of show.
Yeah, with a format that was an accepted format for, food and TV shows and, maybe a little bit funny. And Philip is an incredibly creative guy and has ideas about, really crafting comedic scenes. And, that didn't always jibe, so we had to figure out ways to, make it original while still ticking off the boxes they really wanted us to tick off. And, sometimes some of those remained empty.
Like it or not. So I think we'll pick up that theme because I think that's really interesting and telling in terms of the contrast and the evolution of content in the two mediums. But let's sort of stay a little bit linear for a moment. And Rich, how did the show end up on Netflix? And I know 0.0 is part of that story, which is the
0.0 we actually enlisted early on. Just because they
were from the beginning.
From the beginning when we had I'll Have What Phil's Having, because we knew obviously they had done no reservation. They had done no reservations.
Just because people may not know.
Yes, it is the production company that
0.0 production, New York based. Full disclosure,
Chris and Lydia.
Them,
yes,
actually.
So Chris and Lydia, who run ZBZ and Anthony Bourdain had met a long time ago and had done all of his shows.
They did all the Parts Unknown shows.
And because of that, we knew they had great boots on the ground everywhere internationally and stuff. And since we were going to be, from a logistics point of view, we knew that they knew great people, and that's why, and we knew it was a great company, and that's why we went with them. We do 6 episodes under I'll Have What Phil's Having for PBS. We knew it did very well. Did actually really, really well in its time slot. Won James Beard Award for Best Show, for Best Food Show. But then there was we didn't know if it was going to get picked up or not. And we wanted to, keep moving. We wanted to move ahead. We have got crew that we really like. We've got, now we've got, post-production that gets the show. You don't want to lose, those people to other things. We want to keep moving, and they're just not pulling the trigger. So eventually, I mean, this was a pretty dragged out process, but eventually we decided to take it to other places. And Netflix had already, I think, had they already licensed, I think, to license the show for Netflix. So they had already had it on Netflix.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, just I think it grew exponentially. Like people seeing the show once it went to Netflix, obviously.
Before they actually did a deal for new episodes.
Yes.
So you had your...
So we had I'll Have What Phil's Having, the 6 episodes there.
And there was Exporting Raymond even
and there was
before
also
that.
Exporting Raymond, which is my brother's documentary about him going to Russia to make Everybody Loves Raymond in Russia. So then it's trying to extricate ourselves. Exactly.
But actually, where some of the conventions that are still on the show now had their beginnings, like the Skype call with
the parents,
Max and Helen.
Which is I love that.
Yeah.
By the way, as a fan.
So that all started. That was where Philip said, "Okay, if we do the show, that's gonna be going on every episode." And so we do that every episode. We do. It's more or less a recap. It used to be thought of as like, because it'll be, as my brother says, like a postcard back home where we tell them, but it turns into the Max and Helen show every time we do it because they're just insane. And
they're automatic every single time.
And they're, yes.
They've never let us down. They're always hilarious.
They've never disappointed.
Did they rehearse? We digress again, but
no. Although I remember my father saying after the first couple, "What are we going to talk about?" Because I want to, and I'm like, "No, you're not going to," because I'm sure although I do think my father thinks about jokes before he go. I think he does.
He's starting to read his own press, maybe. But no, then they don't know, and they don't know we're calling until a couple of days before we call. Okay.
I mean, they know we're going to call. I think my mother dreads it and my father looks forward to it. But I think they both love being recognized, like on the street. Like my mom sometimes gets around.
That's very sweet.
That she loves.
Oh my God. What a gift.
Yeah.
Very quickly to wrap up the how you got on Netflix story.
It turned out that WGBH wasn't going to, I think they were trying to get, funds together or something like that to try to get the money. I think PBS was giving half, WGBH, which is the affiliate that also, that helps produce the show. They just didn't put it together.
Yeah.
And so we had the opportunity. Netflix wanted it. And it took a while, but that's how it got.
It took a while. Literally,
that's how it just got on.
For the deal, like literally the business deal to separate.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
And then why the change in title? How did that happen?
WGBH didn't let us have.
They didn't.
No.
Are you guys? Do you prefer the new title or what's your feeling?
I think we do now.
I do now.
Yeah.
I think it was very hard at first.
Titles are hard.
Titles are really hard, and it took us a really long time.
And let's face it, they accrue what we call brand equity. They accrue a personality. And, you kind of let it go.
Yeah.
And that's different.
But, that's also something like Bourdain started with a cook's tour and then went to, I think, No Reservations and then went to Parts Unknown and, as he switched networks.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And we had that weird story where Philip and I were in, it was Nancy Silverton's daughter who I think came up with the title "I'll Have What Phil's Having," and she called him to tell to ask him about the title, and Philip and I were sitting at Katz's Deli. We were sitting at the the famous table where "I'll have what she's having," and literally we were sitting at that table when she called with the idea for the show. Wow. And we were like, okay, well, we got to do that. That's the.
And no one acted out the fake orgasm scene.
No.
Okay.
Although the hot dogs were very good.
Talk a little bit about how the show, how the additional budget has made certain creative decisions and differences possible, and how that's impacted how you guys make the show.
John embezzles half of it.
Sure. Yeah.
Exactly. Rick is over here.
Yes. The difference is I'm much more comfortable.
Exactly. I drive a Bentley.
But look, Netflix is a juggernaut. It's redefining the TV industry. We are the happy beneficiaries of their success to a certain extent at this point. The budget increased significantly, which, allowed us to do things like add a couple more shoot days, which is really important for us for a number of reasons. Probably the most important factor there is that it allowed us to leave room for what we were talking about before, which is the serendipity of meeting somebody we didn't plan on, or hearing about something when we're there that we didn't plan on, and having the time to be able to go back and do that. And, the time to be able to, do what we did in the Dublin episode, for instance, that we were talking about earlier.
And also to leave out scenes, because, we shoot, you shoot for 8 days and you can't fit everything in. So you really get to call the best scenes that you have, the best moments that you have. Right. So that's really a luxury for us. Because, it just, sometimes it just doesn't work, sometimes, you know what I mean? Sometimes it just, the chemistry is not there or something like that, and it just doesn't work. So it's nice to be able to leave a couple of scenes on the table. Sorry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And then the other big thing for us is that the photography and building out a sense of place by shooting, the little transitional scenes, which we call essays, to try to help really, build out the portrait of the place where Philip is, and that takes time. Yeah. So, that's that part of it. And then, the other part is in post-production, giving us a little bit more time to craft the shows. And, but you had mentioned that you felt like the shows maybe were a little tighter, maybe were a little bit more dynamic than they, have been in the past, or at least it's been an evolution. And part of that is because really Philip has the time to pay incredibly close attention to everything and to write to the, footage that we've gotten, and to, build it out and make it great.
The show, to me, has somewhat of an auteuristic feel.
Definitely.
And that's obviously a credit to the creative team, but obviously it's a credit to Phil's sensibility.
Oh yeah.
How involved was Phil in the transition from PBS to Netflix, and does he feel that he's got more space to be the auteur with respect to his show?
I think he always felt it was his sensibility. Whoever it is, whether it was PBS or we send Netflix, we send them a rough cut. You're right. So it's basically, we don't send it unless we're happy with it. And when I say we, when Philip is happy with it, right? We have the advantage that I know Philip's sensibility. So when we're doing the edit and we're getting it to a pretty decent shape, I pretty much know what he's going to like. We add a couple of scenes that we know it's a little, we always keep it a little long, both within scene and also maybe some extra scenes that, what do you think of this kind of thing? But it's even in the edit where I'm always thinking about Philip's sensibility. It is definitely his, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's fortunate that, Philip and I, and to a large extent, John, have a similar sensibility. We all kind of think
you're all rowing in the same direction. It shows,
and especially after 18 shows, we really know what the show is about. We really know, and so it gets easier for us, and in which case it gets easier for Philip, right?
Yeah.
So the first 6, you know what I mean. It would his involvement in the edit was many days, if not weeks, and we've culled that down to, you know what I mean? And now, you know what I mean?
We get still, a lot closer for him.
You get a lot closer.
In part, what I think I mean as I listen to you speak is there anything to the idea that because you're at Netflix and because there's, there's sort of so many more shows and in some ways, there's no pressure, as you indicated, in terms of a certain format and a certain show they want, that there's just a more relaxed approach, which is I'm just going to do whatever I want, whatever works for this creative team. we have no.
Well, I will say one thing, which is that with PBS, you had to do what was it, 55 minutes, right? Or 50, what was it, 52 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, they have
forget
very
what it was.
strict
So
formatting.
there is something to be said for that, because let's say our Cape Town show, I think it's probably less than 50 minutes or something. It's somewhere
It's
between
the
45.
shortest one,
It's the shortest one, and that again, that's a luxury, because you only want to put in the stuff that you really like, and you know what I mean, and
You don't
and
have to compress it or stretch it to the time.
And New York is over an hour, just because it's
And
just,
it didn't feel long.
so hopefully that's the case.
You tell us.
Yeah,
No, it didn't.
No, but hopefully
The
that's the
show's got a
case.
great
So
run.
that is a huge. I mean, the ability to deliver something anywhere between 45 and an hour 5 or whatever, hour 10. We usually don't like to go much over that.
That's interesting because
But that is a luxury.
Yeah,
They also really respect Philip, I think,
Yeah.
I mean, and getting back to the whole auteurship thing, for me, it's like a masterclass working with him, both on location and in the edit room. I feel it every day. He's a brilliant guy and a nice guy. And are you listening, Philip?
You're in love.
I am in love. I really do love the guy.
It makes me a little sick.
But I like to say a couple things. One is that he really understands the physics of his own comedy. His instinct is there, and we're all following his instinct. And that goes for everybody there. And the other thing I like to say is that as a director, I feel like my number one responsibility is to set the table for him, as it were, not get in his way, be there to make sure we've got the coverage of him, not miss a beautiful moment, whether it's funny or poignant. That's my number one goal. And it really is all in service of his vision and his instinct. Yeah. And I think the other thing, getting back to Netflix, is that I think because they're so big and because they're eating the world in a way, and they have so many different types of programming, it's not like you're at a network that's a little bit more narrow and has a little bit more of a goal in terms of their audience to, serve them exactly one way. I think there's room to be a little bit more genre,
Niche.
Yeah, or not, or there's a way to be in between genres. There's a way to push it a little bit more and be a little bit less defined, and so I think that's a nice freedom to have.
And in terms of audience, you're gonna you're gonna get a wide berth, but you're gonna find the people who are gonna like you are gonna really like you.
That's right.
And you can sort of build out. And I think, Rich, I mean, my impression anecdotally is that the show has really found its audience, and that audience is building.
I think anecdotally because
And
again, we
let's
don't
talk
know
about that.
because
People may not know that.
Netflix doesn't share data with us. Which is
it's not it's with no show creators.
No.
Which is probably good and bad at the same time. I mean, in some ways you don't. You like it for business reasons, but from a...
I mean, you kind of want to know.
I guess so.
I mean, you kind of want to know. Yeah. And if you think about it as just far as a negotiating...
Yeah, that's why I say from
right?
business perspective, you would want to know, of course.
You would want to know your relative value. But we do notice anecdotally... I just, Philip and I were just in Chicago last week, and, just the number of people who stop him seems... exponential. Yes, the number of chefs who know of him, the being stopped on the street, it's different.
Yeah, response to screenings that we've had, they sell out very quickly.
Yeah, it's different.
Well, I just anecdotally, there was recently an event at the JCC Manhattan, and I've been to many events there, and I've never seen it sold out. And I've never seen it standing room. It was standing room only.
Well, that was John and myself. I was standing in the back.
But yeah.
And it's, it's been great.
One of the things I love about the show is that you guys linger on scenes and
very
moments.
purposefully. Again, that's we don't want to cut away. Like when we want everything to play out. And Philip did the same thing on Raymond. If you ever watch episodes of that, it's very often you're on the, you stay on, you get the, you really stay on the reaction after the joke and
in Raymond.
Yeah, because it just builds the, humor. And I remember even in the first episode we ever cut in Barcelona at El Kim, which is a breakfast place. And I remember there's an interaction with a couple next to him, and Philip really he did not want to cut. We ended up cutting a little bit because it got a little, but we really try to let everything play out.
Just let it breathe, and that's
especially
if
it's funny, and that's very against everything that that most things happen in the world.
Yeah. Feel the real time and the hesitation of somebody.
And also
it's very purposeful.
And it really is human. And what I mean by that is, and I'll say, and I'm obviously a little bit of a fanboy of the show, but I think you guys have creatively raised the filming of the breakfast party, lunch party, and especially dinner party to an art form, because there are these set pieces of the meals, and often the people at the dinner party, let's say in Venice or in Dublin or in New York or wherever, Hong Kong, don't really know each other that well. And then you see the relationship, everyone's guard goes down, everyone becomes more themselves, the wine is poured, and by the end of it, the warmth oozes out. And the camera is there for the whole thing.
And that also happened in the first episode. That was when we did the rooftop. And Philip came and did not want to go there. He really didn't, because he was uncomfortable, just like he would be, like he is in real life. I mean, because all we're doing is filming him traveling around the world, right? It's not that much. It's not a character. There's very little contrived except for, okay, we're going to go to this, rooftop dinner party where you don't know anyone. So he was immediately out of his comfort zone. It was awkward. Hopefully you get that in the beginning, but that's what it was like. He was awkward. And then eventually, like you said, the wine flows, the food is amazing, the people are lovely. And it turns into this holy crap.
Amazing experience.
Yeah. And it turns into this amazing experience.
Moment,
and
which he's clearly
and by the way, and we've had, we have shot, not that many, but we've probably shot a couple of scenes like that didn't work. Yeah. Right?
I can imagine.
Just like because not like anything, why would you show, but as Philip always says, why would we show that? We want you to go to the place. And the truth is, it doesn't happen that often. It really doesn't happen.
Yeah, our ratio is kind of crazy.
Because he puts himself out there. He's really funny. He really likes meeting people. And so it almost always works out.
And to I think give you guys credit, the crew credit, the creative team credit, but the entire crew feels like there's a family experience, and Phil brings you guys in to the scenes at times. And I think that gives an incredible warmth, and sort of my sense would be that the warmth and closeness of the crew in those scenes adds to everyone else having a great time.
Yeah.
He creates that for us, and everybody feels it, and it's really so much fun to do. We feel the love, and it hopefully it comes.
I remember, and going back to just a scene that some scenes that don't work. I remember the egg cream scene in Tokyo, right? I mean, it was deadly. That scene was a little deadly, right? He was with the family of a sushi chef. Lovely people, but that scene was going nowhere.
There was a big communication gap.
And I remember, and there was a big communication gap. It wasn't good. The food was like, he was eating, pond loach. What is it? Pond loach. Pond loach,
which are not particularly appetizing to us Western people.
Yeah, you should have done your John.
And I do remember,
and
I do remember Philip giving me the look like, "When are we gonna get out of here?"
Yeah,
and
you said,
I think
we're
John
done shooting
and
the scene.
I think John and I had a conversation, and it was like John was like, we don't really have it yet, and let's give it 5 minutes, and then all of a sudden it turned into this, and again, it was to Philip's credit, they brought up a family tradition that they do every Sunday. And Philip says, our family tradition is egg cream. And Philip turns to us and says, let's, do you think we can...
We're in Tokyo.
We're in Tokyo. I think we
can
can find milk and and chocolate syrup. And he does this egg cream thing, and it's fantastic. It's fantastic. Yeah, and that's just like And again, maybe next time it doesn't work out that way, but it sometimes you have to push him out of his comfort zone a little, or John will just say, no, we gotta hang out a little longer.
But that took the family out of their comfort zone, like Philip was taken out of his comfort zone with their pond loach.
Exactly.
So it became this, reversal, and they were so cute, and like most of them thought it was disgusting, except for the father who wanted another one.
Loved it.
So that's perfect.
Yeah.
How do you guys? So, well, I was going to say, how do you guys kind of collaborate creatively? But that's it. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, usually
you come in, you have the same sensibility. You've been together for a long time now, and on the fly, these things just happen, I guess.
And they become tropes for us. Like obviously, there's Helen and Max, who are in every show, but the egg creams made a comeback. And I don't want to ruin the show for anybody, but if you watch the New York episode,
that's right.
Egg creams always make a comeback.
Yeah, and I would imagine that if we're lucky enough to do more of these, that they'll come back again.
And and again, there's a lot of writing on the show. You don't necessarily, it's not a written show, but obviously Philip is writing in his head when he's talking to people. He writes again when we do interviews, which are just us bouncing questions off of him, and then he writes in the VO. After the show is in, and those are all opportunities to make the show better and funnier, and more entertaining. So there is he does quite a bit of writing on the show.
How long do you think Phil wants to do this? Bourdain?
Forever.
50? Yep. Okay. That's the answer. I was going to say, because Bourdain
he doesn't always seem like it, but he does.
It's really fun, and I think he really is having fun.
Yeah,
I've been privately pushing John. You got to do a city in Canada.
We definitely Montreal. Well, we were thinking Montreal, maybe Toronto.
And it's funny.
We were thinking Montreal, but maybe Toronto.
Yeah, and
we're definitely doing Chicago. And we're definitely doing Chicago.
Yeah.
And recently, it's funny in terms of trying to measure how the show's doing. Social media obviously is a big feedback for us, and we get more and more people saying, please come to our country, please come to our city. And recently it's been Canada. There've been
a lot of
Canadians love it.
A whole bunch of Canadians have been asking
Brazil.
us to come.
Yeah. And Brazil.
And Brazilians.
Yeah.
That's a somewhat random twinning.
I don't know. I don't know why. Although I remember talking to someone at Tastemade, Tastemade the thing, and they said their second biggest market is Brazil.
Oh, really?
So I have no idea why, but they're very into food,
and so
I know Netflix would love us to go back to South America, so we'll definitely do like Rio or Sao Paulo.
So, John, obviously, on Netflix, it's not the traditional kind of television distribution model either. Can you talk a little bit about that difference going from network to Netflix and how that might also impact how you think about audience?
Yeah, this isn't really my area of expertise particularly, but the way that content creators make deals with someone like Netflix is very different because they're in 190 countries. When your show is released, it I think typically releases to all of them at the same time.
With a touch
it's already been versioned. They've already done subtitles in many different languages and some dubbing in different languages. And what that does to the deal is there's no ancillary markets. There's no back end. Obviously, there's no home video. There's all that stuff needs to be figured in, and I think typically it's a buyout, and that's the way it works. But that's one of the major differences, I think, in for content creators working with a place like Netflix.
And do you think that's different, obviously, from the perspective of building your audience? Do you think that's better or worse?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I think it's really cool to all of a sudden be worldwide.
I would think so.
And especially for a show like ours, and I think it was one of the things that Netflix found attractive about us is that we are an international show. Yeah. We do go everywhere, or a lot of places. And so it makes a lot of sense. And they are also in those markets, so there's a cross-promotional value for them, From a creative standpoint, I mean, it's great to just get things out to as many people as possible and, to be able to start to get feedback.
That must be a great feeling.
It's
amazing.
amazing.
Wake up the next day and you're all over the world.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also not, but it'll also be nice when we travel next to have people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because even when we were in Venice, people came up to, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's just nice.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
Feedback.
And it actually feeds into then the show and lets Philip again, make contact with more and more people, as we travel around the world. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
The one funny thing is one of the demographics that the show seems to appeal to the most is older folks, because Max and Helen have a huge following. Not that it's just older folks. Everybody loves them. But, sometimes I think we get concerned that a lot of people or some people who want to watch the show haven't yet learned how to use Netflix and, internet-enabled television, So like a part of our audience needs to be educated how to access the show, But I think that's all changing pretty quickly.
Yeah. Okay. As a creative team, are you thinking of any other shows, any other projects?
I mean, I would just say that as we travel the world, we meet certain people who are wonderful and, who beg maybe a little bit more attention and leave it at that.
Happy people.
Yes.
Give me this, narrative or doc style?
I think similar type things, but maybe with a different bent, but keeping within, sort of like, happy people doing happy things.
And how beautiful is it to be, who knows what works out, but to be a Netflix where it's just, you can just so imagine that you would have the freedom to try something else in a way.
Yeah, I mean, it's still hard to, look, you still got to,
you still got to
green light it and you still have to, pitch it. But look, the advantage of doing it there is that when they really like something, they get behind it. You get a number of episodes. You don't have to worry about writing it and then doing a pilot and then, hoping it gets into the schedule and all that stuff.
And also you can build audience a little more, obviously you need audience in it, but it's not like, oh my God, if we do this and we don't have this ratings and we're done and we're so done, it's like there's a long tail.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have a metrics in their head. How many people versus the cost of the show. I'm sure that factors into everything they do. But it's certainly freeing.
Well, listen, guys, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate your coming in. And we'll be watching. Thanks very much.
Wonderful. Again, thanks for having us.
Hey, thanks for having us, Alan.
Thanks, guys.
That's a wrap on this episode of The Medium Rules with Alan Baldachin. For more information, go to our website at www.hballp.com. And you can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget to rate us on Apple Podcasts.